You just clicked on this video, so you're alive, and interestingly, in order to understand exactly where you came from, we must first understand what it means to be alive. Life is an organized genetic unit capable of metabolism, reproduction, and evolution. It's important to remember this as we go way back in history to figure out exactly how you got here. Astronomers believe our solar system began to form 4.6 billion years ago when a star exploded and then collapsed to form the Sun, and around 500 smaller planets collided with each other to form the inner planets we know today, including your home, Earth. For about 600 million years, Earth was too hot for life. Most of the water was evaporating into space, and even if some simple chemical reactions began to take place creating life, the comets and meteorites hitting Earth at the time would have brought enough heat to make the developing oceans boil, destroying all potential life. As comets and meteorites subsided, Earth cooled and it became possible for water to remain on the surface. And so, life begins around 3.7 billion years ago. There are many theories about how exactly it began. Some believe simple life arrived from a meteorite, while others think chemical evolution started with compounds reacting to heat, or perhaps they were struck by lightning. And while the exact date is difficult to pinpoint, a new study claims to have found the oldest fossil ever at 3.77 billion years old, an ancient microbe that flourished around a hydrothermal vent on the ocean floor. It's around this time that the first simple cells began to evolve on Earth. They were able to capture energy, replicate themselves, and evolve, and became the single unit on which all life will be built, including you. For 2 billion years, all organisms on Earth are unicellular, and they likely lived in the oceans, shielded from the hard ultraviolet light of the sun, but then something remarkable happened. Photosynthesis. Around 2.5 billion years ago, a random mutation occurred that was advantageous to cells, and they began using the energy of the sun to power their metabolism. And since oxygen, or O2, is the product of photosynthesis, our atmosphere changed, eventually creating the ozone layer, which acted to shield the Earth from the sun's deadly light. Of course, at this point, O2 is poisonous to most organisms, but over time, cells evolved to tolerate it, and because metabolic reactions using O2 were more efficient, cells could grow larger. Around 1 billion years later, cells begin to engulf and co-opt smaller cells, increasing their abilities to live in diverse environments. This selective advantage led to cells sticking together in a coordinated manner even after dividing, and these cells eventually began exchanging genetic material, aka they had sex. Single-celled organisms would divide by mitosis or simple nuclear division. But once meiosis evolved, genetic reorganization began to occur, and the rate of evolution increased as offspring were now more genetically variable, and some of these offspring were more likely to survive and reproduce. And so the tree of life began to explode. First, there were plants, and then fungi, corals, then protozoans like crabs, ectoderms like sea urchins, and then fish like sharks and cod. And then tetrapods evolved from fish and began adapting to living outside of the water part-time, initially gulping air and absorbing oxygen in the gut. As time passes, species would evolve lungs separate from the gut for absorbing air, as well as a new way to walk on land. In come amphibians, reptiles, dinosaurs, and finally, mammals. In fact, our entire ancestry stems from a cute, furry-tailed, rat-like mammal which survived and thrived around 66 million years ago, just after an asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs. And after tens of millions of years of evolution and new species emerging, one branch of the Protangulatum family tree evolved into our ape and monkey ancestors. And nearly 4 million years ago, one of the first human-like creatures arrives, Australopithecus afarensis, the most famous discovered remains being that of Lucy, who stood upright. 100,000 generations later, or 2 to 3 million years ago, the species group Homo began, which had a bigger brain and started using their hands for more complex activities like creating and wielding tools. This was the first step of transforming our environment to improve our lives. It was also a catalyst to switch from a vegetarian diet to one containing meat, which is a more concentrated form of nutrition and less affected by seasonal shortages. These simple stone tools allowed us to rip through meat and would become the tool of choice for 2 million years. And around 1.8 million years ago, Homo erectus emerged, the direct ancestor to our species. Finally, a few 100,000 years ago, modern humans, or Homo sapiens, step into the light, larger, smarter, and more capable than their predecessors. Interestingly, we almost didn't make it. A climate change event around 140,000 years ago plummeted the human population to only hundreds of people, an endangered species. But we survived. As recently as 60,000 years ago, three different species of the family Homo coexist: Homo neanderthalensis, Homo denisova, and we, Homo sapiens, which all lived on this planet together. In fact, sapiens and Neanderthals mated quite often, which is why most contemporary humans, including you, have Neanderthal DNA. The Neanderthals died out around 30,000 years ago when Homo sapiens were arriving in what is now Europe, and from this point on, the Homo sapiens were the only living humans left on Earth. Unlike our primate relatives whose evolution favored strength, ours chose brain power. In fact, your brain weighs 2% of your body weight, but uses 20% of your caloric intake, and this brain power allowed us to survive in a variety of environments as we began to migrate around the entire world. Where we started as small, wandering groups of less than 100, we began to settle in groups of thousands, then millions, and now billions. You were born a Homo sapien, and that is how you got here.